If you're running legacy, perpetually licensed Epicor software and you're wondering whether one of its modern SaaS-based solutions is right for your business, you've probably bumped up against inaccurate, incomplete, and high-level information on the web. I'm going to walk you through how to make a proper assessment as to whether one of Epicor's modern SaaS-based solutions is right for your business. I'm Jonathan Gross, Pemeco Consulting's Managing Director. If you're running Legacy Profit 21, if you're running Vantage, E9, certain versions of E10, you're probably bumping up against the limits of those applications. You might be experiencing performance degradation, and you might have extensive customizations that are preventing you from upgrading, applying latest security patches, or even the latest features and functionality. If you are busting at the seams of the legacy solutions, you're probably asking yourself, well, how do I make a business case for a new solution? And is Epicor's modern cloud-based solution suite right for my business? There are a few things to think about when you embark on this journey. First thing to understand is, what are the benefits of a modern cloud-based solution in general? And then the next piece of the puzzle is to assess how your business is going to specifically benefit from a modern cloud-based solution, and ultimately what the real cost profile, the total cost of ownership of that solution looks like. We're going to unpack these things. When we think about modern cloud-based solutions, what we're really thinking about is an evergreen software that is continually updated. It's getting the latest and greatest features and functionality and technological enhancements like AI. And that's a wonderful thing. Most companies don't like to be landlocked in legacy. They want to be able to take advantage of the latest innovations that the product has to offer. Now, once you have identified a cloud solution as potentially being right for your business, really the journey, the evaluation should be inward focused. It's important to understand the specific ways that your company might benefit. And that's going to involve an assessment of the organizational benefits, the business processing benefits, the decision-making benefits, and the technical benefits. When we think organizational benefits, really what we're talking about is leveling up our workforce. What we want to do is make sure that we use our machines and our computer systems in ways that they're designed to be used. And they are really efficient at processing and doing calculations. And our people, our human capital in our business, are really good at making decisions. And so what we want to do is think about how we can really slot our workforce to do what our workforce is really good at, and use the systems to do what they're really, really good to do. And so when we think of legacy systems, and if you look through your organization, you're probably going to find a lot of people doing low value work like manipulating data in Excel or exporting data from one system and importing it into another, creating manual journal entries and the like. If you look at your IT department and what they're doing keep the lights on activities oftentimes. They're doing basic systems administration, database administration, performance tuning, patching, operating systems, managing infrastructure. And what we want to do with our workforce is, as we think about shifting to the cloud, we want to upskill our workforce so that they're doing higher value work in the organization. So when it comes to our functional workforce, people in supply chain, people in manufacturing, people in distribution, people in finance and accounting, we want to get them out of the business of manually manipulating data, reconciling data, and working in Excel sheets and making really, really good decisions. When it comes to IT folks, we want to get them out of the business of the keep the lights on activities and get them in the business of continuous improvement and business process improvement. And so when we think about implementing a modern solution and a cloud-based solution, it's really important to understand how you're going to change your business processes and practices in order to enable that. And so when you are evaluating how to go from your legacy to the modern, it's important to conceive of the best practice business process, how to create an integrated transaction that flows through departments so we can get rid of a lot of the manual work that is being done today to push that transaction cross-functionally. And when it comes to cloud-based solutions, the vendor takes on a huge amount of the responsibility to maintain the infrastructure and the environments and the backup and the disaster recovery. So what that does is that frees up your organization to develop a different type of IT skill, to develop continuous improvement and business analysis skills with people who are going to work with the business to identify opportunities for improvement, to leverage new features and functionalities as they're continually released, and to implement those things to the benefit of the business. And so why cloud instead of perpetually licensed on-premise systems? Well, in those perpetually licensed models, the IT department and various other personnel would spend a whole whack of their time implementing updates and doing the infrastructure configurations. With the vendor now undertaking that responsibility, the organization now has opportunities to refocus those efforts on business improvements. Let's be realistic though. It doesn't mean that we don't have to test new functionality as it's released before it's deployed into your production environment. Of course, you're going to have to go through your regression testing processes. You're going to have to go through your documentation, updating the training guides and deploying the training. You have to do that anyways. But a lot of that back-end infrastructure and systems administration work is offloaded. And so really the benefits of the cloud are that in many cases, we're taking some of those workloads that we used to do and we're shifting them onto the vendor. Now, of course, it's important to do your diligence when you're evaluating a cloud vendor that's providing a mission-critical heartbeat-like system. It's important to evaluate the strength and depth of the team and of the organization that is providing that service. It's important to assess the disaster recovery, the cybersecurity, the contingency planning, the policies, procedures, and infrastructure that's in place to deliver that mission-critical system. Now, from a cost modeling perspective, what we see on the web is oftentimes incomplete pictures of what the true total cost of cloud is. We're pulling up articles all the time that say cloud is more expensive than on-premise. It depends on what you include in your calculations. And so if you want to really assess the total cost of ownership of cloud, it's important, of course, to assess the subscription fees that you're paying. It's also important to assess what you're getting for those subscription fees. Are you getting a highly available system that says, if my primary system goes down, I'm going to be up and running in a failover environment in 10 minutes or 1 hour? Well, if that's the case, and that's important to you from a disaster recovery perspective, when you're doing that cost modeling, it's really important to assess what it would cost you to build a highly available environment. It would be important to assess the staffing level that's required to deliver that. So as you're building these cost models, make sure that they're like for like, and that you are getting a complete picture based on the environment and the solution, and you're not just looking necessarily at the subscription fees against the licensing fees. In some cases, yes, it may be cost beneficial to go with a perpetually licensed systems. In many cases, in our experience with off-the-shelf packages, when you do the full economic analysis, cloud tends to be economical over the long term when you're considering the application costs, the infrastructure costs, and the personnel costs. The last thing I want to focus on is really that personnel side of things. There's a misconception in the industry that a need for technical people goes away when you go cloud. Now, you're always going to need some measure of technical capabilities to support your environment and your organization. So if you think of a cloud system, it is evergreen. At some point in time, you are going to be required to take feature packs, updates, security patches, and the like. You are going to need technical personnel to help you deploy those patches, to test them, and to bring them in production. You're going to need to do the same when you deploy new features and functionalities, when you migrate data. So the technical requirement may shift. In some cases, it may reduce, but it is not entirely going away. Point is, in order to make a well-rounded decision, a well-informed decision on whether to upgrade to cloud, it's important to take stock of your business today, where it's at, really quantify the inefficiency in your business process, quantify the work that's required functionally and technically to continue to deliver your business. And you're going to want to model that against a future state that conceives of best practices and processing efficiencies and perhaps a restructured, refactored IT organization. If you'd like to learn more about how to build an effective business case, how to make a good decision, we're producing plenty of content. Follow us on LinkedIn, subscribe to our YouTube channel. For Pemeco Consulting, I'm Jonathan Gross.